Welcome to Worlds Collide. Please comment, like, and subscribe for more content. Chapter 10. New Realities. The 2 weeks unfolded without incident. Latra and Prof. Frey drilled me daily on weapon familiarization. I was even permitted to fire low-power training rounds on the range. While the pistol's recoil was nearly non-existent, the rifles kicked like a mule. The stalkers took a keen interest in my rifle, which they dubbed a kinetic rifle. We couldn't test-fire the AR due to the round's ability to penetrate walls or the threat of ricochet. Shay couldn't glean much information from her father, other than that he already awaited them at the station. He apparently expected her to resign and join the family business. Meanwhile, Gracia had managed to uncover information on a ship Shay's father was testing. The project remained classified, but he acquired early schematics through contacts on their homeworld. They scrutinized the blueprints at length during their afternoon sessions, whenever they weren't in briefings. Shro whistled at the weapons diagrams, shaking her head. Those are several generations ahead of our own here on the ship. It's a heavy cruiser, Shay clarified for my benefit. Look here at the nanoplating. Shro pulled up the details. They've incorporated nanobots to allow the armor to heal itself against minor damage. Significant damage will still necessitate repair by hand, but this could tip the balance in the conflict. Gracia displayed a comparison diagram between the Predator's Hope and the new design. The battle cruiser dwarfed our current ship by nearly 50%. Most of the ship appeared to be comprised of weapon pods and command suites. There was a small hangar for drones and troop carriers, but little else. Most of the drone complement consisted of electronic warfare platforms. The Predator's Hope crept up to the docking bay with painfully slow precision. I had expected to feel contact through the decking plates, but there was no hint anything had changed until the wall lights flickered emerald green. We waited near the docking gantry as the airlock cycled with a rush of compressed air and steam, rolling away to reveal a long passage with 2 docks workers in tight-fitting blue environmental suits. Shay and I exchanged a worried glance before stepping across the threshold together. Our pace was measured, with me only a step behind. We deemed it best to allow Shacy to lead the procession. She carried a large burgundy bag over her shoulder while I bore my 2 green packs. We had brought only the necessities. The rest of our belongings would be delivered to our room. We stepped out onto a massive cargo deck that could easily accommodate Predator's Hope's entire complement of military crew. Cargo transports wove back and forth in established lanes, marked on the deck with flashing lights. These differed from Earth's forklifts. They were long trains of hovering flatbeds, each laden several feet high, with what looked like heavy plastic crates. It was all controlled chaos. People waited to greet family and friends as they disembarked behind us. One Krathen stood apart from everyone else, like a tower rising above its surroundings. He was flanked by 2 heavily armed guards clad in white military uniforms trimmed in crimson. He was an imposing figure, standing almost a head taller than his companions. His fur was solid white, with no noticeable markings visible outside his crimson robes that flitted with every passing transport. Shay spotted him immediately. He was difficult to miss. Even I had noticed him before all else. Shay strode over to him with the air of confidence of any battle-hardened officer I had ever encountered. They embraced briefly as he leaned down to touch his forehead to hers. I stood back several feet, waiting to be summoned forward. The looks I received from the 2 security guards left no doubt about the importance of the male they guarded. "You have gained weight," he observed as they parted. "The military must not be keeping you busy." "They keep me busy enough, Father." Shay turned and gestured for me. "I want you to meet Mitchell. He saved my life on the human planet." I stepped forward and bowed respectfully. He looked down at me, and his eyes narrowed when he noticed the bond band on my arm. He looked from me to Shay. "Why does he wear our family bond?" he asked coldly. If the security guards had noticed it, they showed no indication. Even after Shay's father drew attention to it, they continued scanning the room, ignoring me. "Not here, Trask," intoned a soft and equally commanding voice. The female who resembled Shay approached with her own security in tow to embrace Shay. "How is my favorite daughter?" Her markings were nearly the same, but not quite. Months aboard the Predator's Hope had taught me to distinguish between similarly patterned Krathen. Not only were they slightly different in appearance, but her scent also differed wildly. Shay's mother smelled like cinnamon and lavender rather than Shay's pine. I am your only daughter, countered Shay lightly. She returned her attention to me. This is my bondmate, Mitchell. Mitchell, this is my mother, Shermar, and my father, Miktar Trask. It is a great honor to meet you both, I uttered in near-perfect Cretan. The gesture elicited a raised eyebrow from her mother and a deepening scowl from her father. Quite, growled Trask. We have a transport waiting. He said nothing more as he turned away with his guards trailing close behind. Another younger female, dressed in white robes trimmed in amber, stepped in and retrieved Shay's bag. I hoisted my 2 bags onto my shoulders with ease and followed to Shay's left. Her mother walked to her right, arm in arm. The transport was a large hovercraft painted with white and black shimmering patterns that threatened to give me a headache if I looked at it too long. Shay paused to open the back hatch where her own bag sat for me to add mine. I felt a reassuring slip of her tail against my leg as I stepped back to close the door. The gesture helped to calm my nerves slightly, but just slightly. The ride to the awaiting ship was brief. The 3 transports slid into the maw of one of the docking bays of her father's ship with a graceful stop that barely registered. Trask exited the ship first and extended a hand to his mate with a sidelong glance at me. Shay exited last, behind me, as I stood aside for her. I didn't mirror Trask's gesture because Shay didn't need my assistance. She slipped out with a practiced grace that bordered on royalty. In a way, she was, at least in my eyes. I took her hand once we stepped away from the vehicle. It was such a natural gesture that I didn't consider it. She accepted it without hesitation, but didn't look at me as we walked. Instead, her eyes remained fixed on her father's back. She walked with her head held high and her features perfectly poised. We stopped at our room first for an opportunity to change into formal attire for dinner. The room was vast, with 2 sleeping berths and a common room. Each berth boasted its own walk-in shower. There was even a side room with a small oblong table and a handful of chairs for meetings. Shay's bags were emptied and neatly stowed in the closet and drawers while my bags were tossed unceremoniously onto the bed in the adjacent berth. There were 4 bags waiting, the 2 green duffels I had carried with me, and 2 more Blue Fleet bags. I started to shrug off the additional bags, but curiosity prevailed. Shay entered just as I was about to open the first bag. I apologize about my father, but we suspected our meeting would be awkward. Don't worry about it, I said calmly. I turned to her, the bags momentarily forgotten, and playfully licked her nose. I'll adapt. Shay laughed at my playful gesture but didn't wipe away the moistness. I see my gift has arrived. Her expression turned thoughtful. I don't remember the extra bag, however. My attention was drawn back to the extra bags. I didn't request anything. I moved to open one of the bags. I couldn't hear anything ticking, which I considered a good sign. No strange odor emanated from either of them. One bag was simple and contained crystalline white robes trimmed in burgundy to match her own. There were others, but both our attentions focused on the other bag. Unlike the first, it featured a biometric lock. I studied the lock for a moment before pressing my thumb to a scanner. It sprang open with an audible click. Inside resided a metal box and a note resting on top of it. I thought you might need these, it stated. There were no signature or special markings hinting at the contents or whoever had sent it. The lid held another biometric scanner. This time, however, it required a retinal scan in addition to the finger. I gasped when I pulled the lid back. Inside lay my AR rifle, along with the ammunition I had brought, next to another box that bore the Stalker logo on the lid. The logo depicted a crouching cat with a jeweled eye that glowed red. I touched the jewel, and the locking mechanism retracted with a dull click. Inside was an energy pistol, along with 3 extra charges. I turned it over in my hand and read the serial number. It was the exact pistol I had practiced maintaining over the past week. Old grumpy bastard, I mumbled mostly to myself. To Shay, I declared. He does like me. Who? She asked, puzzled. Latra, I responded, studying the weapon. This is the pistol he has had me practicing with the past 2 weeks. I performed the function check as he had taught me. It worked perfectly. I replaced the pistol into its case and slipped it into a drawer within the closet. Along with the rifle I hid behind the clothes I began digging out to hang. I extracted the remaining contents of Krathen-style military uniforms. There were a surprising number of hidden compartments in both the pants and jackets, the latter of which I discovered a compartment designed to conceal the pistol. I was halfway through unpacking when the door chimed. When Shay opened it, a small female with orange tabby fur stood there. "My name is Tashar, mistress. I am to be your aide while you are here, and longer if you desire." Shay stepped aside to admit her. "Your mother has asked me to assist you for the dinner." I listened with detached interest as I stripped down to shower. True to craft and grooming needs, the shower pelted my skin like a million bees. Fortunately, I had become accustomed to the pressure. My nanites fortified my skin against the onslaught with an efficiency that never ceased to amaze me. Even without their benefit, I had come to enjoy the hard showers, especially after particularly brutal training Profre was fond of. I was halfway through drying off when the door chimed again. "I'll get it," I called out. I hurriedly pulled on my pants and entered the common room. I palmed the keypad, and the door slid open. Before me stood Shro in her formal military uniform. "What are you doing here?" I asked, startled. "Miotre pulled some strings with command and had me assigned as your liaison." I stepped aside and waved her in. "Did you get your package?" she asked, glancing around the room with practiced efficiency. "I did. I will have to thank him if I ever see him again." I turned to return to my room to dress. "Do you have acceptable quarters?" I inquired from my room. I busied myself with pulling on the garments Shay had acquired for me. "I am next door," she commented. I emerged from my room, tightening the matching burgundy belt. It reminded me of an old Celtic style that wrapped over itself to hang down once buckled. Shro meticulously inspected the office when I emerged. "What are you looking for?" She glanced up from her inspection of the table. "Listening devices." She held up 3 clawed fingers. "Everything looks clear as far as I can tell." It was obvious she was speaking aloud for the benefit of the devices she found. She pointed to the 3 locations, one embedded in the table, another within one of the lights in the common room, and another near my door in the ceiling. She pointed to my room, and I stepped aside. "What does being my liaison entail?" I inquired. She waited until she had finished in my room and raised one finger, pointing to the nightstand. I nodded my understanding. "I am your go-between for the military and responsible for your safety." I nodded and gestured for her to sit. "Shay is with her aide in the other room," I commented casually. "Is it just you?" "I have a team of 5. She held up 7 fingers. "Grasha is also here. He is to continue debriefing you on cultural comparisons." We chatted about nonsensical matters while we waited. We both stood when Shay finally emerged from her room with Tashar trailing behind. I gaped in amazement at her appearance. She wore a flowing burgundy dress that covered her from neck to ankle, accenting her form without revealing too much. The silver trim sparkled like glittering stars along the edges. Her mane was braided in a single row from her forehead to the middle of her back, with a crimson ribbon woven into it. The rest of her fur drifted in the environmental systems like finely spun silk, reminding me of the endless Midwestern grass fields. "Close your mouth, human," scolded Tashar. "You look beautiful," I murmured in awe. I couldn't help but feel like some poor pauper in comparison. "Shro!" Shay's expression lit up at the sight of our friend. "What a pleasant surprise. What brings you here?" "I have been attached to the 2 of you as military liaison and security," she explained again. "The military, in its infinite wisdom, has deemed the 2 of you an important asset." She looked toward me at the mention of asset. Tashar escorted us to the dining hall by walking between us. Shro brought up the rear. Her formal military attire clashed with the ship's interior design. Tashar entered first and announced Shay by rank, introducing me as just the human as we entered. The room teemed with strange faces clad in different colored attire, sitting around the table with Trask and Shermar seated at the head. Shay was shown a seat to her father's left, and I at the opposite end. Shro, despite Tashar's objections, assumed a position behind and just left of me. She stood with her claws clasped together in a casual waiting posture. Trask stood and pulled the chair back for his daughter before sitting back down. "You all know my daughter Shacy," he gestured. "And her consort," added Shermar, gesturing to me. "He is from Earth." The gathered assembly afforded me the slightest recognition. Some were curious, others bordered on disdain, and a couple seemed bored and dismissive. I made to stand and bowed before returning to my seat. He wears her bond band, remarked a calico-colored male, looking from me to Shay and then to Trask. Trask shot him a serious look for a brief moment. Shay has returned from a year-long scouting mission on the primitive human world where her ship crashed. Mitchell assisted her return to us. I have been briefed on Mitchell's exploits, commented another black-furred male of medium build. He wore civilian attire but exuded an air of authority. He has given us interesting intel on his species. They continued to speak of me as though I was not in the room. Let them forget about me, I thought. One female sat at the table who appeared as much out of place as I did. Her bare, smooth skin with forearms was a pastel green. She had blonde hair instead of fur or a mane like the others. She didn't speak much, though she did keep looking in my direction, while the others spoke about how resource-rich Earth was or how primitive my world was. That is why I want to enlist my daughter to lead an expedition to Earth to conduct detailed scans of the resource locations, remarked Trask when one of the people asked about exploiting the resources. The military has placed Earth on restricted status, cautioned the one with black fur. Trask waved a hand dismissively. I will speak with the ruling bodies. I'm sure I can sway them to our side. Our war with the Stalath must take precedence. You would stand a better chance by approaching Earth diplomatically, I finally interjected. I didn't like the direction the conversation was taking. We humans can be very friendly when the opportunity arises. I leaned forward in my chair, placing my folded hands on the table. Or we can be very hostile if the need arises. Every face swiveled to me. An orange and black striped male with a short-cropped mane spoke. Your planet boasts no defense. You have barely reached your satellite. His tone dripped contempt as he addressed me. I shrugged nonchalantly. That may be so, I said with a smile, though careful not to show my teeth. But we are very adaptive. I can guarantee that my people are already working to reverse engineer the military's crashed ship. That ship was destroyed after the two of you were evacuated, countered the black-furred male conversationally. Regardless, there will be pieces to analyze, not to mention how much information they retrieved before we retook the ship, I shot back. I will not be part of exploiting my mate's home, Shay interjected in frustration. Would it not be better to forge alliances rather than squander their possible incorporation? Mate, came the sing-song voice of the green woman. I was under the impression the human was your consort or even servant. Shay crossed her arms and leaned back smugly. We have been bonded for over 2 cycles, she corrected. As such, I will not betray him. The black-furred male flicked his ears in amusement, while others flattened theirs to some degree in concern. The green woman smiled, revealing rows of ivory teeth similar to those of humans. Interesting, she said. Trask fumed in anger. We will discuss this further at a later date, he growled dangerously. He took a moment to regain his composure and stood. The others rose as well, along with Shay and me. My daughter and her mate, the last he uttered with contempt, have things to discuss. They have just arrived. The assembled guests bowed slightly and filed out. Only Shay, her parents, and I remained. He spoke again once we were alone. How dare you embarrass me, he roared. He is human, primitive. Shay held her ground. You embarrass yourself. You will not use me for your profits. I will not have my only daughter mated to this human, he snarled, pointing at me. I will have it dissolved. You will not. He is my choice, Shay growled back. What does he have to give you? Trask towered over his daughter, but she refused to back down. Shay took a step forward, menacing. He possesses everything to give, she seethed. I will not relinquish the father to my offspring. Trask started to respond, but stopped to look at me with murder in his eyes. I held his gaze unblinking. He turned back to Shay. Impossible! Shermar watched the exchange with annoyed patience, but turned to me. Is this true? She asked simply. I beamed with pride, not just as a soon-to-be father, but for my mate. The bond is everything, I quoted from the prophecy. She is mine, I stated evenly. I am hers. I smiled then, a human smile that revealed my fangs. Trask slammed his fists on the table. I wasn't sure what he meant to accomplish by the outburst, but it changed nothing. The abomination will be terminated, and I will kill anyone who tries to take from us what is ours, I countered with a rage of my own. He reared up to his full height. You are weak, human. You cannot protect yourself, much less my daughter. I crossed my arms defiantly. You should conduct your research, Miktar Trask. If you knew nothing of your grandchild, what other things are you ignorant of? I said calmly this time. I may be weaker than you in every way, but I will sacrifice my life for our bond in your grandchild. I love you, Father, whispered Shay, but the bond is everything. We are the bridge between our species. She looked to me. I first chose Mitchell out of the need to survive. I now choose him out of the need to live. I could no more dissolve the bond than I could remove my heart. She moved to stand beside me, our hands finding each other. You must accept the truth, Father. We are one. Trask watched us depart with a mixture of hatred for me and disbelief in Shay's defiance. Shro stood in the hall outside the door with her ears laid flat. They perked up only slightly as she fell in step beside us. She said nothing as we returned to our rooms. Once we were safely back, she simply informed us that she would be next door if we needed her.
Join us for more from Worlds Collide.